Okie doke. So time for an update on probably my least watched, but most actually interacted, like people that actually asked me about a project. The Elux, the electric Hilux. Finally doing some more on that. You probably have been a bit curious as to what's been going on from the last video, what those issues were and whatnot. Well, good news is I think I've worked out all the issues. There's just been a big delay in ordering parts due to, as you would know, the coronavirus, and that most of the parts I've got to get, they need to be ordered from overseas, like America or China. So parts that usually take me about, a few weeks to a month to get here have taken me about 4 months. But the big part that I've been waiting on has finally arrived, so we'll show you that right now. And that is here right inside this box, which you've probably already guessed what it is, and it would have already answered one of your questions from the last update video. The motor I have in the Hilux is gone poo. Well, not gone poo, it's fixable, but I burnt the windings out. It was not powerful enough for the ute, because it wasn't powerful enough for my ute, which I did kind of suspect, I have to admit. But unfortunately, it wasn't the original motor I had in the ute, which you probably would have noticed if you've been watching my channel for a while, which I don't know, not many do, but I'm sure there's some of you out there. But yeah, it was, the original motor was fine. It got stolen. I had it in the back of my car because I was transporting. My car broke down the side of the road. I had to leave it there in order to get a tow. I should have taken the motor with me. Hindsight's a great thing, but that's a long story for another time, which you're probably not going to hear about. You might hear in a Kaiser Ramblings video if I ever do one of those again in the future. But yeah, long story short, I had a good motor. It got stolen. I then went to try and source that same motor again, and couldn't get one because all the Australian suppliers for EV parts and everything, none of them were listing it. And the only place I could find it was two American suppliers, and I would have had to have bought it from their side. So I would have had to pay the translation, the Australian to American dollars, sort of up the price, more expensive than I would have paid for the one I paid originally. Then I had to pay delivery, and then because it's coming from America, you have to pay stamp duty once it comes into Australia and through customs, which then just makes everything just go through the fucking roof. I learned that experience when I bought my Tesla modules. So I ended up settling for the motor which you saw working in it, which was a Zibo supermotor. It's just a Chinese brand motor. It was the only motor I could afford to replace it. It was a lot less powerful than the Monterey motor I bought originally, but I was hoping it would suffice. So I wasn't expecting huge things out of it, but I thought it would at least do, highway speeds and be powerful enough. But it really wasn't. Because the reason why in the last video you saw when I was having issues with the burning out, through a bit of investigation and talking to a couple of people within the field, basically worked out that motor just wasn't up to scratch for the size vehicle. So the reason being it burnt out is so because even though I had the settings right in my controller to not allow more than 100 amps going into that motor, which is actually a very low amp rating for a motor of that size, due to the fact that it was trying to power a vehicle that was exceeding its, capability, it was working harder, and therefore, despite it, he said, even if you've got the settings right, if a motor wants to pull more amps, can still pull more amps, and then it pulled more amps, burnt the windings out in the motor, and that's where the issue occurred. It's fixable. You can fix the winding. You can redo the windings in the motor, because the windings themselves might be fine. It could just be the insulation on them, but usually you replace the whole windings. But to go down that route, it's kind of pointless because the motor's not powerful enough. So I decided to go searching again to see if I could find a better motor, or the original motor that I bought that was fine for the job. It was more than enough. And luckily I actually did. And this is where I learned another lesson. If you are doing one of these, don't just go solely off what's listed on the websites, like for parts, because a lot of the time you'll find if there's a particular part, as long as it's within the brand range that they can get in, they're able to order it for you. So I got onto EV Works and I sent him an email. Well, no, I didn't even actually call. I called him actually. I gave him a call. I spoke to him about my situation. He said he's actually able to. He was no problem for him to order one of those in for me. He just no longer stocked them because they, being a small supplier, they can't afford to have it because they want a high selling motor. But he said he's no problem ordering it in for me. So I was like, fantastic. So after all that, I decided. Luckily, I had a bit of spare money, which is rare. So I decided to order one then, and it was supposed to come to me within a month. I ordered it in March. So if you're wondering why there's been just nothing happening with this build, it's just literally because I've been waiting for parts to arrive. Because parts usually that take maybe a week to a month to arrive. This motor's taken, I think, nearly 4 months. It was March, what month now? I'd say nearly, yeah, I probably got one massive. About 4 months it's taken to arrive. But I finally got it. And this motor should be fine from my calculations, and also from speaking to Tim at EV Works and speaking to the manufacturer of the motor controller, Ziva. Both of them have clarified this motor is definitely compatible with that controller, and it should be powerful enough to more than enough power to use for my use. So fingers crossed. Everything goes well this time. So I'll give you a quick look at the motor here. You've already seen it, because a few years ago I had the same motor I unboxed, but we'll show you again. And then my job today is I've got the engine hoist outside. I've got to pull, so I'll try and film as much footage as I can, because it's only me out here, so I haven't got a cameraman, but I'll try and get some decent footage. But we'll be pulling the old motor out. I've got to get the coupling off, because that coupling has got to be modified to fit the shaft of the new motor. So I'll have to drop that into a metal shop, but I'll explain what needs to be done there when it happens. Very simple, nothing that complicated, but it's all interesting stuff you might want to see. And then I'm going to have to be making some all new brackets for this, because the mounting brackets I made for the old motor will be different to this one, because the old motor is slightly smaller. It has feet on the bottom of the motor. This one doesn't have feet. It does have bolts. I might be able to bolt those feet on, but it'll be a different mounting sort of brackets to mount it onto the engine mounts on the car. But yeah, so you'll be seeing that. So there'll be a bit of, lift motor out, a bit of fabrication involved. I'll try and film more of it this time, because when I put the old motor in, not a lot of it was filmed. I kind of just did it and, showed you the after effect, which may happen this time. We'll see. I'll try and do more, but I get kind of motivated and I just get moving. Filming footage sort of, it breaks the flow of things, but, I like making these videos, and I know you like watching them. So, yeah, so anyway, I'll stop rambling on. We'll get into it, because I think I've been rambling on about nearly 10 minutes now, and we'll start showing you some things. So, let's go. So here's the new motor. It's kind of cool. It's one of the only things I've ever gotten in a crate. I know it's kind of normal for things that come in crates, but it's always exciting when you get a crate to crack open. But let's take the lid off that. And there is the beautiful new motor, which should do a lot better than the Zibbo motor that is currently in my ute. So with this motor here, again, you got it sounds different. So on the motor, in the Zibbo motor, it was a 22 kilowatt motor, which translates to about, about 60 to 80 kilowatts of a petrol motor. Because electric motors, horsepower, I could be wrong here. So do your own research, because despite me doing this stuff, it's kind of confusing. But generally speaking, when you want to translate electric power to petrol power, you times it by 3. Don't ask me why, because it really doesn't fucking make any sense to me, because you think kilowatts would be kilowatts, horsepower is horsepower, but for some reason it's not. So if you got say you got a 10 kilowatt electric motor,
times that by 3, it's it's equivalent to a 30 kilowatt petrol motor. So if you had a 30 kilowatt petrol motor, you put a 10 kilowatt electric motor to be equivalent, if you want enough power. So that's why but obviously that not always be the case, because that's why I did the calculations with the other one, because the diesel motor that came out of it, which was pretty lackluster, which could be why, because it was a lackluster motor. As you would know if you've owned that model Hilux, it's 2.8 diesels, so they were a 60 kilowatt motor, which I thought that motor put in should be fine. Obviously not. This motor right here is going to be a nice little power upgrade. Well, it should anyway. I'm not going to get my hopes and think it's going to be some massive powerhouse, but judging by the calculations, this should be equivalent to about a 200 horsepower petrol motor, because this comes in about 63 kilowatts continuous for power. So wait, no, is that continuous? And I think it comes at 62 kilowatts or 60 or around there power. So a lot more powerful than that Zippo that came out of it, about 3 times the amount. So more than enough power. This is the biggest motor Monterey make in the DC range. If you were to go any bigger than this motor, you would have to start going into AC motors, which then bumps prices up. Obviously, AC motors do have their advantages over DC motors. With a DC motor like this, you can't do regen braking. You've got brushes. I won't go in that full detail. Electric motors, do some research on electric motors if you want to know, but DC motors have brushes in them, and over time those brushes will wear out. Don't think it's like a petrol car you got to service or anything. Maybe give it 10 years time, I might have to replace some brushes in here, which are just like little magnets that literally touch around as the rotor goes around. They brush on the road, which makes the whole thing work. So you can't do regen, and there's it is a small amount of servicing these motors, but very minuscule. But the advantage is this motor cost me a bit over $2,000, whereas to get the equivalent, not more power, the equivalent in power in an AC motor, you're looking at starting at about probably $4,000 to $5,000. So that's, if you want to do an EV conversion on a budget, DC motors is definitely the way to go. And they're not bad motors, they're great. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just that you can't say, oh, I do regen braking and that. And obviously there's some other things. If you talk to someone who's really knowledgeable, that's other things. But yeah, I like the DC motors. DC motors also have their advantages too. You get you get better bottom end torque, although you also get power loss. So as your battery pack goes down on an AC motor, due to the fact it uses an inverter, you generally won't lose as much power as a battery pack drains, whereas a DC motor, as a battery pack gets lower, you will notice that the power in your car will drop a little bit. Not that it's uncontrollable, but obviously from a fully charged pack to a nearly dead pack, you will notice the difference in performance. But yeah, so there's just little things like that. But this is basically, as far as DC motors available now, this is a very, very good motor. This is probably up there. The best DC motors usually people recommend are your net gain motors. This exceeds everything of the equivalent net gain motor, and the reviews I've read, the quality is fantastic. So yeah, definitely a good motor to go if you're looking for an EV conversion. Mott Energy ME1002. But enough rambling about that. That's the motor that's going in it. We'll take you outside and I'll get the engine hoist set up and run you through what's involved in taking the motor out, because I might as well, because it just gives you an idea, because you'll see how simple it is. This is nowhere near as daunting as taking a petrol motor out. When I found I burnt the motor out, it wasn't it was a shit because it's money. I was pretty devo, but the actual task involved in swapping it out is it hasn't made me too worried, like a petrol motor would to most people. So let's go and see how this is done, eh? So here's the workshop where we're performing this task. It's a very, very highly equipped workshop, as you can see. It's definitely gotten better from what it used to be. If you watched my old videos, you would have seen what used to be here was literally just that little garden shed there. That's what I classified as my workshop, and I used to store my tools in there locked up and just bring them out here. But I've at least got might as well, this is not a property tour, but if you're watching this, just be prepared. It's a longer video. Got me workbench here, which is piled up with crap already. You know, I'm very disorganized, but I can find anything there. No one else can find anything. Ask you for something, I'll just straight there. That's how my mind works. We've got a little undercover area here. And where I am doing the engine swap is completely out of cover or off flat ground, which is perfect. Not, but you know, we'll manage. So got the engine hoist here. I've borrowed off a mate. Got to get that out of the trailer. And we'll run you through here. I'm going to stop talking about bullshit for a bit. So here's the motor that's coming out. Obviously, got those leads disconnected. I've got to disconnect that lead. I've got the heater unit here. I've got to take that off because it's covering up the mounting plate, because the mounting plate will have to come off. Not right away, luckily, so I can leave that for now, but it's got to come off because what we've got to do, as you can see here on this motor, so this little clip here, I'll just get that undone. One-handed. Oh, come on. There we go. So take that cover off, and you can see here, see how there's those bolts? So this way a minute. I'm just going to get a bit more comfortable position. Okay, it's better. Alright, so as you can see here, this is the mounting plate that goes to the gearbox. So as you can see there, the holes in your gearbox, they just bolt that. So that's just a flat plate that goes there. And then these are the bolts that hold, they go all the way around and they hold the motor to the mounting plate. So you can see here, that's the flywheel fan for the motor right there. So all we've got to do to take this motor out is you literally just got to disconnect the cables, which they already mostly are. Just that one there, got to take off. Undo these bolts. And there's a coupling on your shaft that comes from your gearbox, and it just slots over that. So all we've got to do is undo those bolts, get the hook on the engine hoist, just get a pry bar to gently just pry obviously, sorry, missed that step, didn't I too? Jesus Christ. We've also got the engine mounts, obviously. As you can see, I've reused the old car's engine mounts, just made brackets to fit that go to feet on the motor. The new motor doesn't have feet, so it's going to have to be mounted differently. I'll show you how we do that. But yeah, so you undo the bolts to the engine mounts, undo the bolts to the plate, and they will actually still hold itself, believe it or not, even without a hoist on it because of the coupling. And then obviously we'll hook up hoist on there, get a pry bar, gently just pull that back just so it slots off that bar, and the whole thing just comes out. And it's just a repeat process for putting the new one in. And the only reason I've got to take the engine down mounting plate off the new one is, as you can see here on this motor, it's just bolts and nuts that go through, which those bolts actually aren't quite long enough. I was going to put longer ones on there, but don't have to do that now because this motor's coming out anyway. But the new motor, it doesn't have just holes here. It's got actually threaded holes, so it won't need nuts on the new one. The new one gets bolted from the other side. So we're going to take this whole plate off, put the motor to it, and then bolt it from that side, and then put the plate and the motor to the gearbox. But there's a few more steps before that. So as I'm sitting here in my engine bay, I'll climb out and we'll get cracking to the next step. Rightio, so flash forward, I've got everything all unbolted, which I'll show you in a second. So she's just about ready to have the hook put on her, and we'll start prying her out. So I'll flip the camera around and I'll show you in here. Alright, so here we go. So as you can see, I removed all the heater unit and that to reveal the full plate. I was going to just slip the motor off without removing the plate, but the bolts kept, well, I got some of the nuts off, but the bolts kept spinning when I was removing the nuts. So I'm going to have to remove the whole plate with the motor off, take it out, then put the plate back on, put the new motor on to line things up, and then we'll go on that later. But yeah, so all the bolts to the gearbox have been undone. The bolts to the feet brackets been undone. The feet brackets are still bolted to the engine mounts, but the feet to the actual motor itself have been unbolted. everything's been moved out of the way, more or less. We've got this hose here, which is the air conditioning, but I should be able to, as I gently pull it out, flex that out of the way, because I don't really want to remove that. Well, I can if I need to, because the aircon isn't charged at the moment. But yeah, there's that too. So we'll get on to the next step of removing the motor and putting the new one in. So let's get cracking onto that bit. Flashes in a minute. Fuck me, typical Kai, I almost forgot to show you a really crucial step in this process. There's a big gust of wind. Just see if the camera can hold out. Alright, so as you can see here, these are your brackets. I've taken the bolt out there, I shouldn't have. But these are the brackets that go to the engine mounts that the motor's feed bolt to. There's the mounting plate that bolts to your gearbox, because this is the gearbox right here. And one thing you need to do before removing anything is you need to wrap a strap around your gearbox and to your chassis and ratchet it up nice and tight, so this gearbox doesn't want to just simply drop and potentially break things or damage things when you remove the motor. So if you're removing any motor, be it electric or petrol, make sure you brace your gearbox, because you'll have problems otherwise. So anyways, with that done, let's get back to the step like I was supposed to just before. Okie doke. So here we go. We've got everything all set up, ready to go. Got the engine hoist here. It's all hooked on the motor. I probably don't know if I'm about to film much this process, but basically I've got my two pry bars here, so it shouldn't need much prying. It's not like it's going to be seized or anything. It's just got to slot off, but it's just a matter of just gently easing, going around and easing it back a little bit until it's off that shaft, keeping tension on this so it doesn't want to drop and just, you know, get it out like that. So I'm going to do that and then show you the next step, whatever that will be, whatever I can film next. But I need two hands, so see you in a bit. Alright, so the motor's halfway out, as you can see. It's separated from the gearbox. There's a coupling just there. You might be able to see the shaft there. You can just see the shaft of the gearbox. Taking a little bit of manoeuvring because I had to remove the power steering here, so I can just adjust that to get that hose to go over the top of that, so I can get this engine out. It's motor out, not engine, and we just got to tilt it up like that just to sort of bring her out from everything like that, if that makes any sense. So we'll interval to the next part. Alright, so as you can see, I've got the motor all the way out now. A little bit of manoeuvring, but she's there. There's a coupling that I want. There's the old motor. There's the gearbox. My only issue is I've got this far, and due to my magnificent workshop not having hard floors, it just having a whole kind of, you know, dirt floor with the carpet here and there. Shut up. The wheels to the trolley kind of have dug themselves in real hard, and which kind of makes it a little bit hard for me to pull this stupid contraption back to get that bloody motor out. So I've come up with this brilliant idea. I have this electric lawnmower here with a tow hitch that hasn't got a tow ball, but I'm going to attach a strap to this and to that and try and get, let's just stupid camera around, get this to the front here so I can lower it down and do my bits and bobs with it. So a little bit dodgy, but hey, I'm only doing it very slowly and I'm only pulling it a short distance, so she should be sweet and it's going to be pretty cool. Try and see if I can get this camera
propped up somewhere so you can actually watch this, because I'm sure it'd be interesting to watch. Let's go.
Alright, so we've got everything set up. Let's see if we can move this hoist forward.
Okay, that should be good. Lovely. Perfect. See, I told you it has more uses than it's been a mower. Alright, so now we've got that part out of the way, we can get a good look at everything. So here's the motor with the mounting plate. So as you can see, there's your motor, there's your mounting plate, there's your bolts that go to your motor, and there's your coupling. This is what I need to take off to have modified for my new motor, because the shaft is a bit different, so I've got to pry that off. It's just a pressure fit, because on the new motor the shaft is a bit bigger, so this will have to be drilled out, and it's not this is a splined shaft, so that means it's kind of like, not exactly, but it sort of has little splines, the bigger splines than this, so it slots over there so it can't slip on the shaft. Whereas on my new motor, it's just a round shaft and it's got a single spline where you have a key in. So it's like a key in is where you have a hole here, and it's basically like usually an Allen key type screw, and that just goes, it screws in tight to where that single groove is, so it stops the coupling slipping on the shaft. But either way is fine. But yeah, so we're going to take that off. You can see in here the gearbox, that's just the cap to the power steering bottle, because I had to remove that to get the motor out. But yeah, so she's ready for some things to happen. Like I said, I'll probably have to remake some of these brackets. I might be able to reuse them, but I doubt it. We'll see how we go. But otherwise, I think that we may leave it at that for this video. Thanks for watching. If you watched this far, I know these can drag on a little bit sometimes. I try to keep things moving as much as I can and keep them as interesting as I can, but yeah, at least you get to see, despite this being a bit of a fuck up of mine and having to redo what I've already done, at least you guys get to see a bit more of the process, because like I said, I didn't really film it last time, so try and film a bit more of it this time. And yeah, you'll see a new video soon, hopefully. Don't know what it'll be. It might be something to do with the ute or something other else, but we'll see what I feel like doing. And I don't know when that'll be, but we'll see, we'll find out. Catch us next time. If you like this video, give it a like. It helps, you know, get the algorithms working, and subscribe if you want to be notified of when I pop out new videos, because they're pretty random. So yeah, catch us next time. Bye. Almost perfect.